The message from the Galactic Council was brief, cold, and to the point. Humanity's aid is required. The Zhurk Empire is on the move. We are out of time. General Jared Cole sat at his desk aboard Earth's flagship, U.S. Resolute, staring at the cryptic transmission. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it. The magnitude of what this could mean. The fate of countless worlds hinged on humanity's ability to respond. And yet, Earth had never faced anything like the threat that loomed. The Zhurk were a race unlike any other, brutal, ruthless, and technologically superior. They had swept through the galaxy, obliterating civilizations with terrifying efficiency. Their weaponry was unmatched, their armies vast and relentless. For centuries, they had crushed entire star systems, leaving only ashes in their wake. And now, they had set their eyes on Earth. But what did the Council mean by humanity's aid? Earth was just beginning to make its mark on the galactic stage. With barely a handful of ships capable of interstellar travel, they had no fleet, no alliances, and certainly no experience in large-scale warfare. Could they really help turn the tide against such an overwhelming enemy? General Cole wasn't one to dwell on the impossible. Instead, he set to work assembling the best of humanity's military forces. There was no time for hesitation, no time to ask for help from untested allies. The Zhurk were coming, and humanity would have to rise to meet them, or perish in the attempt. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Fields said as she entered the room, her voice calm but urgent. "The fleet is ready for deployment. We've gathered every ship we can, and the first wave is prepped for launch. However, we still have no intel on the Zhurk's location or strategy. We may be walking into a trap." Cole looked out the window at Earth below. The bustling cities, the oceans teeming with life, the very planet that had nurtured them for eons, this was their home. And now it was at risk. The thought of losing it was unbearable. "I know, Lieutenant," Cole replied, his voice steely. "But we'll take every advantage we can get. We may not have their technology, but we have something they don't: resourcefulness and grit. We'll make them regret underestimating us." As the fleet prepared for its first leap into deep space, Earth's resolve solidified. The crew of the U.S. Resolute was composed of soldiers, scientists, engineers, humans from all walks of life who had come together for one common purpose: survival. In their hearts, they knew the stakes. A single misstep could spell the end of Earth, but the alternative, a galaxy conquered by the Zhurk, was an unbearable thought. "All ships, prepare for launch," Cole commanded. "This is humanity's moment. We've been called upon, and we will answer. Let's show the galaxy what we're made of." With that, the fleet of Earth's finest ships departed from orbit, heading toward the unknown, and toward the greatest battle humanity would ever face. They knew this would not be an easy war, and victory was far from guaranteed. But they also knew something that the Zhurk did not. Humanity was not ready to roll over and die. As the ships jumped into hyperspace, the crew of the U.S. Resolute couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. A new era was on the horizon, and humanity, though young, untested, and outmatched, was ready to make its mark on the stars. The first jump into deep space was the longest and most intense period of silence the crew of the U.S. Resolute had ever experienced. As Earth's fleet emerged from hyperspace, they were greeted by the vast, uncharted expanse of alien space. Star systems glistened in the distance, and the reality of what they were about to face settled in. General Cole stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the massive holoscreen that displayed the star maps and the positions of their ships. His hands were clenched into fists, but his expression was resolute. He could feel the tension in the air. His crew was counting on him. The galaxy, too, had pinned its hopes on humanity. He couldn't afford to fail. "Status report," Cole barked, his voice firm. Lieutenant Fields turned from her station. "We're in the Zhurk-controlled sector now, sir. No sign of their fleet yet, but all our ships are in position. We'll need to proceed with caution. Their forces could be lurking anywhere. Before Cole could respond, the ship's sensors flared to life. A blaring alarm echoed through the bridge, making every crew member snap to attention. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Admiral Cole, we've got incoming. Multiple Zerk warships detected at our coordinates." The first strike came without warning. Suddenly, a colossal Zerk dreadnought loomed ahead, accompanied by two smaller battlecruisers. Their ships were sleek and terrifying, built for war, with dark, jagged edges and weapons that glowed with malevolent energy. The Zerk didn't just conquer, they've obliterated. "We need to respond, now," shouted Commander Elijah Thorne, Cole's tactical officer. "We're outgunned and outnumbered." General Cole's eyes narrowed. "Then we do what we do best, fight smart." Without hesitation, Cole issued the order. "All ships, scatter and engage using hit-and-run tactics. I want them off balance. Use the asteroid field as cover. Don't give them a moment to regroup." The U.S. Resolute shot forward, weaving through a dense field of asteroids. The Zerk ships gave chase, their enormous cannons firing beams of energy that rained down on Earth's fleet. In the chaos, humanity's ships maneuvered with precision, using the terrain of the asteroid field to their advantage. While the Zerk relied on brute force, humans relied on strategy and their agility. As the Resolute tore through the field, dodging blasts and launching counterattacks, Cole saw the Zerk dreadnought attempt to line up for a devastating shot. But Cole anticipated the move. With a sudden course change, he led the Resolute into a narrow canyon between two massive asteroids. The Zerk fired, but their shot missed, colliding instead with one of their own battle cruisers. The human fleet pressed their advantage, using a series of coordinated attacks to disrupt the Zerk's formation. It wasn't perfect, and casualties mounted, but humanity's tactics were having an impact. As the battle raged, Captain Ava Martinez aboard the U.S. Titan, the Resolute's closest ally, led a daring strike that crippled one of the Zerk battle cruisers. Then came the turning point. General Cole ordered the Resolute to launch a full-scale barrage at the Zerk dreadnought's weak point, an unprotected portion of its hull, exposed as it pursued the human fleet. The salvo hit its target, and with a violent explosion, the Zerk dreadnought disintegrated in a brilliant flare of light. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. Did we just destroy one of their capital ships?" Commander Thorne whispered, staring at the remains of the Zerk dreadnought. Cole allowed himself a grim smile. "Yes, we did. Now let's finish this." The remaining Zerk ships faltered. With their flagship destroyed, they hesitated, struggling to reorganize. In the midst of their confusion, humanity's forces launched a final assault, breaking their ranks and forcing the retreat of the remaining Zerk vessels. As the last of the Zerk ships vanished into the blackness of space, General Cole exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the victory. And the cost. The human fleet had taken damage, and several ships were heavily compromised. But they had achieved the unthinkable. "All ships, report damage status," Cole commanded, trying to maintain his composure. The reports came in. Each ship had sustained varying degrees of damage, but none were lost. Earth's fleet had made it through the first battle, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost of war was always high, and this would not be the last battle. "We've sent a message, sir," Lieutenant Field said, her voice tinged with awe. "The galaxy will know we are here." Cole nodded, his eyes scanning the stars ahead. Humanity's first victory, but there's much more to come. This war is just beginning. The exhilaration of the unexpected victory faded quickly. As Earth's fleet regrouped in the aftermath of the battle, General Cole stood on the bridge of the U.S. Resolute, staring at the remnants of the Zerk dreadnought that had been obliterated. His crew, battered but proud, moved with purpose. But something had shifted. Their victory had sent a ripple through the galaxy, but it had also drawn attention. Attention they weren't prepared for. The once skeptical Galactic Council, now looking at humanity with a new measure of respect, had called for a high-stakes peace summit with the alien species that had begun to show faith in Earth. The Kralor, a proud and powerful race, had agreed to send representatives to the summit, and their arrival was seen as a pivotal moment in humanity's war effort. They were one of the few species who had managed to hold their ground against the Zhurk, an invaluable ally. However, as the day of the summit drew near, the tensions that simmered beneath the surface became impossible to ignore. The Kralor, while ostensibly allies, were a race of rigid traditions and fierce pride. The prospect of humans being thrust into such a critical alliance, despite their inexperience, threatened to undermine their fragile diplomatic ties. Despite their new status as a respected force, General Cole could feel the unease of those around him. His crew, soldiers and scientists alike, had worked tirelessly to prove Earth's worth, but it was hard to ignore the whispers among the galaxy's older, more established races. There were too many who still doubted humanity's place among the stars. Then came the attack. The summit was meant to be a gesture of unity, but instead, it became the backdrop of betrayal. As General Cole and the Kralor representatives gathered in the Galactic diplomatic station orbiting a neutral moon, an explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered, alarms sounded, and chaos erupted. "Sir, there's been an assassination attempt on your life," Lieutenant Fields shouted as Cole staggered to his feet, instinctively drawing his sidearm. The scene that followed was a blur. Cries of panic, weapons fire, and the overwhelming scent of smoke and destruction. Amidst the chaos, Cole barely registered the sight of a shadowy figure sprinting through the smoke before vanishing into the crowd. The Kralor ambassador, who had been the target, was gravely wounded, and yet there was something more unsettling. This wasn't a random attack. It was deliberate. Someone within their ranks had betrayed them. Within hours, the investigation confirmed what Cole had feared. The attack had been an inside job. One of the delegates, a high-ranking Kralor officer, had been compromised, either by the Zhurk or another enemy. Evidence suggested that a faction within the Kralor had been working covertly with the Zhurk, undermining the fragile alliance they had just formed with humanity. "Sir, this is bad," Commander Thorne said, his eyes scanning the intelligence reports as he entered the briefing room. "We're dealing with more than just a Zhurk attack. Someone wants this war to fail." The assassination attempt was meant to sabotage the peace talks and shift the blame onto Earth. General Cole clenched his fists. His worst suspicions had come to light. The fragile alliance between humanity and the galaxy's more skeptical species had already been compromised, and the stakes had escalated beyond mere warfare. Now, a new threat was revealed: sabotage from within. If the Zhurk have infiltrated the Kralor, they could be targeting all our allies, Cole said, his voice dark with realization. The Zhurk know how to manipulate, to divide. We can't afford to let them succeed. Captain Ava Martinez, who had been working closely with Cole on strategy, stood up. "What do we do now? If this betrayal is widespread, we could be fighting a war on two fronts, one against the Zhurk and one against our supposed allies." Cole rubbed his temples, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. The Kralor could be trusted no more, and the fragile peace that had been forged was crumbling. But there was no time to waste. If they didn't act swiftly, the Zhurk would use the situation to turn the galaxy against humanity, destroying any hope of solidifying their place among the stars. "We'll have to expose the traitors," Cole said decisively. "Find the root of the conspiracy before it spreads to any other factions. We'll need to move fast, or the war could be lost before it truly begins." With a plan in place, General Cole, Captain Martins, and their crew embarked on a covert mission to infiltrate the heart of the Kralor's High Council. Their goal was simple: to expose the traitors within their ranks and prevent the Zhurk from further manipulating the galaxy's fragile alliances. The risk was enormous. If they failed, Earth would be blamed, and the fragile unity of the galaxy would shatter. But they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy, and humanity's place within it rested on the success of their mission. The uneasy peace that followed the summit's assassination attempt was brief. General Cole and his crew of the U.S. Resolute had already started their covert operation to root out the Krellor traitors, but the war was far from over. The Zhurk, always one step ahead, had expanded their conquest to the planet Iridia, a strategic world in the galactic rim. Iridia was rich in resources vital for sustaining their war machine, and if the Zhurk were allowed to maintain control, they would have an unbreakable foothold in the sector. The Krellor, whose alliance with humanity had been made fragile by the betrayal, needed this planet to remain free. Despite the internal betrayal among their ranks, the Krellor still had some desire to resist the Zhurk, though their unity was rapidly crumbling. General Cole knew that Iridia was humanity's best chance at striking back. If Earth and its allies couldn't liberate it, the Zhurk would consolidate their power, and the galaxy would be lost. "We need to make this count," Cole said, standing before the map of Iridia projected on the briefing room wall. His team, including Captain Martinez and Commander Thorne, gathered around him. The plan was daring: a direct assault on the Zhurk's heavily fortified positions. The hope was to strike before the Zhurk could strengthen their defenses further, but there was no denying the immense risk. If they failed, Iridia would fall, and with it, any remaining hope for the galaxy's resistance. "General, this is going to be a bloody battle," Captain Martinez warned, her brow furrowing. "The Zhurk have fortified Iridia like a fortress. Our forces will be outnumbered, and their war machines are like nothing we faced before." "I know the risks," Cole replied, his voice steady. "But we have no choice. We can't afford to lose this world. Iridia must remain free, or the galaxy will never recover." As the U.S. Resolute and the fleet prepared for their descent into Iridia's atmosphere, the mood among the crew was tense. The stakes had never been higher. This mission wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about survival. If they lost, Earth and its allies would be shattered. And if they succeeded, they would show the galaxy that humanity was capable of taking on the Zhurk and emerging victorious. The drop began with a thunderous roar as their ships plunged through the atmosphere, narrowly avoiding enemy fire from the Zhurk orbital defenses. The enemy was ready. The Zhurk's war machines, towering mechs of metal and flame, stood in rows awaiting the assault, and the air was thick with the stench of war. "Deploy the ground teams," Cole ordered. "We can't let the Zhurk hold the high ground." The Resolute's ground forces, elite human soldiers augmented with experimental tech, landed amidst the chaos, taking positions behind debris and utilizing Iridia's rugged terrain to gain an advantage. The Zhurk responded immediately, launching their own forces in retaliation. For a moment, the battlefield was a blur of explosions, gunfire, and the relentless clashing of two forces determined to win at any cost. The battle raged for hours. Zhurk warships in orbit fired relentless bombardments down onto the planet, but humanity's forces, using the terrain to their advantage, countered with guerrilla tactics, ambushing Zhurk positions and attacking in unpredictable ways. Despite being vastly outgunned, the human soldiers proved resourceful. They used explosives, hacking devices, and even captured Zhurk weapons to turn the tide in their favor. The defining moment came when Captain Martinez and her strike team infiltrated the Zhurk's main weapons depot, an enormous complex located near the planet's largest city. The goal was clear: destroy the Zhurk's ability to launch further attacks. As her team breached the facility, they were met by a horde of Zhurk mechs, each one more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced. Martinez led her team with a steady hand, guiding them through the chaos. It was an all-or-nothing assault. The air was thick with blaster fire, the ground shaking with the explosions of Zhurk artillery. Yet the humans pressed forward, working with precision and an unyielding determination that only humans could possess. "Target their power cores," Martinez barked, signaling her team. "We need to cripple them now." As the team planted explosives around the core of the weapons facility, they made their way to the command center. But as they were about to escape, a colossal Zerk war machine appeared, an enormous armored behemoth that dwarfed anything humanity had encountered. With its towering size and powerful weapons, it was the Zerk's last line of defense. "We have to take it down, or we're dead," Martine said, her voice grim. With no other choice, Captain Martinez and her team engaged in a deadly showdown with the Zerk war machine. Despite the odds, the human forces found their way to victory. Martinez, using her quick thinking, lured the machine into a trap, an abandoned energy grid beneath the complex that they had rigged to overload. The resulting explosion sent the Zerk war machine into a fiery ruin. As the smoke cleared, humanity's forces had secured the weapons depot, and with it, a major victory on Iridia. The Kralor, who had initially been hesitant to join the fight, now saw humanity's bravery in action. With the Zerk's power grid destroyed, they were forced to retreat, their forces scattered and disorganized. For the first time in the war, the Zerk had been forced to fall back. The U.S. Resolute stood among the wreckage, a silent symbol of humanity's tenacity. Though victory had been achieved on Iridia, it came with great sacrifice. The human fleet had lost many soldiers, and Iridia's surface was scared by the brutal battle. But the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a mere bystander. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The Zerk had underestimated humanity, and now they would learn the hard way that Earth would never surrender. The victory on Iridia was a turning point in the war, but it was only a brief respite. General Cole knew that the Zerk wouldn't give up so easily, and the battlefield would shift once again. Even as Earth's forces began to regroup, a troubling realization began to take root. The true enemy was not just the Zerk. There was something deeper at play, something darker, and humanity had just begun to scratch the surface of the conspiracy that threatened to engulf the galaxy. After the battle, Cole found himself pacing the war room aboard the U.S. Resolute, reviewing the intelligence reports that had begun to pile up. His mind was still heavy with the cost of the Iridia campaign. Lives lost, cities shattered, but something gnawed at him. Despite the victory, there were too many questions left unanswered. "General," Lieutenant Fields said, interrupting his thoughts, "we've been going through the data from the Iridia battle. There's something strange. The Zerk's retreat was too quick, too organized. It's like they were expecting it." Cole's brow furrowed as he turned toward his officer. "You're saying the Zerk retreated on purpose?" Fields nodded. "Yes, sir. Our analysis suggests that they had prepared a full withdrawal plan before we even launched our offensive. It's almost as if they were playing us." "Playing us?" Cole echoed, his voice growing cold. "That doesn't make sense. Why let us win a battle if they could have crushed us?" "I don't know, sir," Fields admitted. "But there's something bigger going on. We've intercepted encrypted communications between the Zerk and another faction, a shadow organization. It's been deliberately masked, but it's not Zerk. It's something else, something we haven't identified yet." Cole's heart sank. "Another faction. Who are they?" Fields hesitated before replying. "We don't know yet, but the encryption is sophisticated. It's unlike anything we've seen before. And the Zerk seem to be taking orders from this group. We're not fighting just an empire. We're fighting something much worse." The realization hit like a wave. The Zerk may have been the face of the war, but they were not the true masterminds behind the galaxy's destruction. There was an unseen hand pulling the strings. And the worst part, humanity was only now beginning to understand the magnitude of the threat they were facing. Cole took a deep breath. "This changes everything. We can't just keep reacting. We need to go on the offensive and find this shadow faction before they can make their move." Before Fields could respond, Commander Thorne entered the room, a grim expression on his face. "Sir, there's something else you need to see." Cole followed Thorne to the communications deck, where an encrypted transmission had just come through. It was a message from Captain Ava Martinez, who had been conducting reconnaissance on the Krylor homeworld after their victory on Iridia. She was one of the few who still had access to Krylor High Command, and what she'd uncovered was both shocking and terrifying. Martinez's voice crackled over the comms, her tone steady despite the gravity of her words. "General Cole, this is Captain Martinez. I've uncovered something big. The Krylor Council, some of them, at least, are in direct communication with the Shadow faction. They've been exchanging intelligence and resources for months. I've seen the evidence with my own eyes. The Krylor are compromised." The transmission was interrupted by static, and then Martinez's voice came through again, much quieter, more urgent. "They've been collaborating with the same faction that's been manipulating the Zhurk. The galaxy's largest powers are being played, General. And I don't think anyone knows the true extent of what's coming." As the transmission ended, Cole felt a chill run down his spine. The Krylor, once a potential ally, were now revealed to be part of the conspiracy. Humanity had been fighting on multiple fronts, but this revelation opened up an entirely new can of worms. "This is bigger than we thought," Cole said, his voice low. "If the Krylor are compromised, who else is? How deep does this go?" Commander Thorne leaned in. "It's possible that entire galactic governments are in the dark, General. If we don't act quickly, the Shadow faction could control the galaxy without firing another shot." Cole's fists clenched. They had just won a hard-fought battle on Iridia, but now it seemed like the true battle was against this unseen enemy. The Zhurk were still a formidable force, but they were only pawns in a much larger game. "We need to find this faction. Expose them before they can strike," Cole said with unwavering determination. "We'll need to bring in more allies. The more support we have, the better our chances of uncovering this shadow network." And so, the focus of humanity's war shifted. No longer was it just about holding the line against the Zhurk. It was about exposing the true enemy that lurked in the dark. Every move, every alliance, every battle from this point on would be a test of humanity's will, not just to survive, but to outsmart the shadow that had been pulling the strings for so long. The war had changed overnight. What began as a battle for survival against the Zhurk had quickly escalated into a galactic conspiracy far more sinister than General Cole could have ever imagined. The Shadow faction, a hidden enemy operating in the shadows, had begun to reveal itself. What started with cryptic messages and intercepted communications had now spiraled into something far more dangerous, a covert operation that extended into every corner of the galaxy. General Cole stood on the command deck of the U.S. Resolute, staring at the vast expanse of stars stretching out before him. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was a sharp contrast to the chaos he felt inside. He wasn't sure who to trust anymore. The Krylor had been a critical ally, but now they were implicated in the conspiracy. Who else had fallen under the Shadow faction's influence? "Sir," Lieutenant Fields called, snapping Cole from his thoughts. She held a data pad, the information on it critical. "We've decrypted more of the Zhurk communications. The Shadow faction. It's called the Eclipse Syndicate." Cole turned sharply. "The Eclipse Syndicate." "An unknown entity, sir," Fields replied, "but one that has been manipulating galactic events for centuries. They've been playing the long game, controlling both the Zhurk and the Krylor, and possibly others. It's not just about conquest. They've been sowing division, creating instability, and consolidating power in the shadows. They operate through proxies, through organizations, governments, and individuals who are unaware of the larger scheme they're part of." The name sent a chill down Cole's spine. He had heard whispers of the Eclipse Syndicate during his time in the military, but it had always been dismissed as a conspiracy theory. Now, it seemed like a very real and very dangerous force. If they've been around for so long, why haven't we noticed them before? Cole asked. "That's the thing," Fields explained. "They work in the background, ensuring that no one ever sees their full hand. They manipulate factions, fuel conflicts, and play both sides, always staying in the shadows, unseen. And they've been setting up the Zhurk to be their perfect pawns, guiding them toward galactic domination, while positioning themselves in places of power. Cole's mind raced. This was far more complex than he'd ever anticipated. The war wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight against an enemy that had been influencing galactic history for centuries. And humanity was the new variable in this dangerous game. "We need to find their base of operations," Cole said firmly. "If they've been hiding this long, there has to be a central hub, somewhere we can strike back and expose them." Commander Thorne entered the room, his face grim. "We've been tracking the movements of known Eclipse Syndicate agents across various systems. They're pulling strings on every major planet, sometimes without even firing a shot. They've infiltrated military, political, and corporate organizations on a galactic scale." "Then we start there," Cole replied. "We expose them. If we can hit their core, we might disrupt their entire network." But the problem was far from simple. The Syndicate's agents were everywhere, and identifying them in a galaxy full of fractured allegiances was a daunting task. If they didn't act fast, the Eclipse Syndicate would continue to manipulate the course of the war to their advantage, and the Zhurk might be only the first phase of their plan. That's when a cold thought crossed Cole's mind. What if they've already been influencing humanity? Fields exchanged a tense look with Thorne before turning back to Cole. "There's no way to be certain, sir, but if they're as deep as we think they are, then it's possible that their influence has spread far beyond what we can see." The realization set in with an icy clarity. If the Syndicate was behind the scenes, orchestrating not just the Zhurk, but also the political factions of the galaxy, including humanity, it meant that every move they had made up until now had been part of someone else's plan. The victory on Iridia, the alliances formed, the betrayals, it could all be connected to a single hidden hand. Humanity's rise, their fight for survival, might have been steered from the very beginning. "We can't let them control this narrative anymore," Cole said, his voice filled with conviction. "We'll start with the Kralor. If their high command is compromised, we need to expose them. If the Syndicate is as widespread as you say, then the more allies we have, the better our chances of breaking their hold." Cole turned toward the holotable, where the galaxy was projected, with the key systems marked in red, indicating active Syndicate influence. It was clear that their reach extended far beyond the battlefronts. The Syndicate had infiltrated governments, military commanders, even civilian sectors, and it had manipulated every major conflict in the galaxy's recent history. The only way to break free from their grip was to hit them at the heart of their operations. "Thorne, gather all available intelligence on the Syndicate's key locations," Cole ordered. "We're going after them. Now, no more waiting. We find them, and we expose them to the galaxy." This war isn't just about defeating the Zhurk anymore. It's about liberating the galaxy from the real enemy. Humanity can't afford to be a pawn any longer. Humanity's war had never been more complicated. What had started as a desperate struggle for survival against the Zhurk was now a multi-layered battle against the shadowy Eclipse Syndicate, a cable that had been pulling the strings of galactic conflict for centuries. General Cole felt the weight of the galaxy's fate pressing down on him more than ever. As he gathered his senior officers in the war room aboard the U.S. Resolute, it was clear that the fight ahead would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of every sentient species in the galaxy. "We've got our work cut out for us," Cole said, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "The Syndicate is everywhere, and we can't afford to sit back and wait for them to make the next move. We need to act now, expose them, disrupt their operations, and tear apart their network. This has to be the final push." Commander Thorne stood at attention beside the holographic display, which showed a web of interconnected Syndicate strongholds scattered throughout the galaxy. It was like trying to untangle a web of lies and deceit spun over centuries. Every system, every planet seemed to have its fingers in the Syndicate's operations. "I've been working with our intel teams," Thorne began. We've narrowed it down to a few critical locations where the Syndicate appears to have its main bases of operation. If we can hit these targets, we might be able to take out their leadership and expose their entire network. Cole nodded. We start with the Syndicate's heart, wherever that may be. But we can't afford to just attack blind. We need to be smart. They've been in control of everything for too long. Every ally we have, every faction we trust, could be compromised. We need to move fast, but with precision. Lieutenant Fields raised her hand, offering the suggestion. Sir, we've had a breakthrough in deciphering their encrypted transmissions. The Syndicate's key leadership is centered on a planet called Xylon, a remote world on the fringes of explored space. We believe it's where their inner circle operates, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. Xylon. Cole echoed, his mind working quickly. If that's their base of operations, then we need to take it. We've seen the pattern. The Zhurk are pawns, and the Krelor betrayal wasn't just a fluke. If we eliminate their leadership, we can expose the entire conspiracy and break the Syndicate's hold. The room fell silent as everyone processed the enormity of the mission. It wasn't just another battle. It was the final gambit in the war. If they succeeded, the Syndicate would be shattered, and the galaxy would finally have a chance at peace. If they failed, the Syndicate's control would be unchallenged, and the war would be lost before it even truly began. We have the resources we need, Captain Martinez said from the back of the room, her voice sharp with determination. I can lead a strike force to Xylon, but we'll need more than just ground forces. This operation will require all of our ships, all of our strength. The Syndicate will know we're coming. Then we'll make sure they know. Cole said, his tone resolute. We don't need to sneak in. We need to strike hard and fast. If we can break their leadership and cripple their command structure, the rest of their network will collapse. Let's make them understand that humanity isn't afraid of the dark. The plan was set in motion within hours. The U.S. Resolute would lead the charge, supported by a coalition of allied ships from across the galaxy. Their objective was simple: infiltrate Xylon, neutralize the Syndicate's leadership, and expose their full operations. But this mission carried risks greater than any they had faced before. The Syndicate's forces were vast and well-entrenched, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. The journey to Xylon was fraught with tension. As the fleet made its way through uncharted space, avoiding Syndicate-controlled territories, Cole couldn't help but reflect on how far humanity had come. The Resolute, once a vessel of desperation, had now become the symbol of Earth's strength and resolve, a symbol that could no longer be ignored by the galaxy's powers. Sir, Thorne said, his voice cutting through Cole's thoughts, we've intercepted more communications. The Syndicate knows we're coming. They're preparing a trap. Cole's stomach tightened. Of course they are, but we're not backing down. This ends now. The ships entered the Xylon system under the cover of darkness, avoiding detection as they approached the planet's atmosphere. It was a barren world, its surface scarred by industrial complexes and hidden underground bunkers. As they neared, it was clear that the Syndicate had prepared for an invasion, with orbital defenses already locking onto the fleet. We have incoming, Lieutenant Fields warned as the radar blipped with hostile signals. They're sending everything they have. Engage evasive maneuvers, Cole ordered. All ships prepare for battle. The fight for Xylon erupted in a blaze of gunfire and explosions. The Syndicate's forces, both on the ground and in space, met the human fleet with a ferocity that only someone backed into a corner could muster. It was a battle of wills, humanity against an enemy that had been untouchable for centuries. As the first waves of Syndicate ships were destroyed, the Resolute and its allies pressed on toward the planet's surface. On the ground, Captain Martinez and her strike team breached the heavily fortified Syndicate complex. It was a brutal assault. Each room they cleared brought them closer to the heart of the Syndicate's operations. And there, in the heart of the facility, they found it, a hidden control room filled with the Syndicate's leaders, high-ranking individuals from across the galaxy, working in concert to maintain their stranglehold on the galaxy. The leaders of the Eclipse Syndicate were finally within their grasp. "We've got them," Martine said, her voice cold as she activated the transmission relay. "General Cole, the Syndicate's leadership is in our custody. It's over." The battle on Cylon was a turning point in the war, but its aftermath would shape the future of the galaxy in ways that no one could have predicted. General Cole stood in the command center of the U.S. Resolute, staring at the images transmitted from the surface. The Syndicate's leadership had been captured, their operations dismantled, and their influence exposed for the entire galaxy to see. It was a moment of triumph, but also one of reflection. The war had been long and brutal, but humanity had emerged victorious, against not just an enemy, but an ancient conspiracy that had shaped galactic history for centuries. "Sir, the last of the Syndicate operatives have been rounded up," Lieutenant Fields reported, her voice carrying a note of relief. "The Syndicate's infrastructure is crumbling. We've already begun sending the truth to every corner of the galaxy." Cole nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the stars. The victory was hard-earned, but it had cost them dearly. Countless lives had been lost, and the galaxy itself was in ruins from years of conflict. The Syndicate's manipulation had left scars everywhere, from the devastated worlds to the broken alliances that had been torn apart by mistrust and betrayal. But now, there was hope. "We've made history," Commander Thorne said, breaking Cole's reverie. "The Eclipsed Syndicate is finished. We've shown the galaxy what humanity can do when we unite for a common cause." For a moment, Cole allowed himself to feel the weight of those words. Humanity had stood against the darkness, had fought an enemy that was far greater than anything they had ever imagined. But as he thought about the future, he realized that this victory wasn't just a triumph over the Syndicate. It was the beginning of something new. The Resolute was now heading back toward Earth, carrying with it not just the remnants of the Syndicate's leadership, but also the key to rebuilding the galaxy. The truth of the Syndicate's manipulation was being broadcast to every star system. The galaxy's powers, long under the Syndicate's thumb, would now have to confront the reality of what had been done to them. The lies were over. Cole stood at the window of the command center, watching as Earth slowly came into view. The planet that had once been on the brink of extinction now seemed like a symbol of rebirth. Humanity had faced annihilation, had fought off an overwhelming enemy, and had risen from the ashes stronger than ever. "General," Fields said, pulling him from his thoughts, "we've received a message from the Kralor leadership. They want to discuss terms. They're ready to negotiate." A slow smile crept across Cole's face. The Kralor, who had once betrayed humanity, were now seeking peace. It was a sign that the old alliances could be rebuilt and new ones forged. The galaxy, though scarred, had a chance at healing. "This war isn't over yet," Cole said, his voice firm. "But it's the first day of a new era. We've proven that humanity can stand tall. We can rebuild, we can lead. But we must never forget the cost of this victory." As the Resolute docked at Earth's orbital station, Cole felt the weight of the journey that lay ahead. Rebuilding the galaxy would take time, trust, and effort. But the most important thing was that humanity had shown the galaxy that they were no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with, a force that could no longer be ignored or manipulated by those who lurked in the shadows. And so, humanity's rise was not just the story of a species fighting for survival. It was the story of a species that refused to be held back, that refused to be a pawn in a game of cosmic power. The Syndicate had underestimated them. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with the truth. Humanity had arrived, and they would no longer be kept in the dark. "Let's start the next chapter," Cole said, turning to face his crew. "One where we rebuild trust, form new alliances, and create a future where the mistakes of the past never repeat. We've earned it."